It's 5:30. Time for the meeting to begin. If you please stand as we recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for attending tonight's meeting. Glad to see a good turnout here this evening. All right, gentlemen, have you had a chance to look at the agenda? Do you have any concerns or questions that concerning the agenda?
None for me.
No.
None? All right. I make a motion that we adopt the agenda.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. The common consent agenda, we've had a chance to look at all that. I make a motion that we approve the common consent agenda.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, next on the list, items for commission action. Okay, first on the list, item A, consider adopting ordinances to reduce residential trash collections to 1 time per week and reducing residential trash rates, and authorize city staff to purchase a used 1-ton truck for the sanitation department to perform brush collections. All right, Mike and Mike?
Mike and Mike show here.
There you go. Okay.
So, Ed, you got a copy of the report that was done a couple weeks ago, and hopefully you've had a chance to review that. Tonight we'll just be highlighting these, and we'll go through the findings of the analysis, and then we'll take questions after that. Feel free to stop me along the way if you have questions, something needs to be addressed. So first, the scope and the purpose of this was to evaluate the financial and operating impacts in reducing the residential trash collections from 2 times a week to 1 time per week. So currently, we are operating at 2 times a week. There's only 2 communities in southeast Kansas that are still providing that residential trash pickup twice a week, and that's Independence and Iola. The city had been in discussions on ways to reduce residential collections, and with that, how to be more effective and efficient in our operations. During these conversations, it was kind of sped up a little bit. 2018, the community-based strategic plan was enacted. Beautification was one of the primary initiatives that was outlined, and that was to reduce residential trash collections and also clean up the city and the blight around the city. As we discussed last year through the budgeting process, we were going to analyze and look at various different means of our service plan. And the intent was to accomplish all that prior to coming now, but what we're coming now with this plan and reducing it to once a week with our current program because it allows for a quicker implementation. We did briefly look at contracting out services, but we quickly realized in that many of the services that are offered to our residents today would be eliminated. And part of these reductions would be contrary to what the beautification initiative was. So we need to further analyze, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, different service plans, and understanding what the financial and operating impacts are, as well as the services to our citizens and the beautification initiatives. So first thing that we had to do is understand how we were collecting trash today. So we did a field study to go out and collect that data and what kind of time it was taking to collect each residential stops. We took the sample came from all areas of town, and a little over 16% of the residential customers were sampled in that field study. The study found that we were on average collecting each stop at 32.65 seconds, and that allowed for about 110 stops per hour. And the slide right here kind of shows all the different data points, and the red line right there in the middle is that average collection time. So just to give you an idea of the current sanitation customers, there's approximately 31 residential customers. The commercial side is broken up in two areas. There's 226 with can pickups, so they operate exactly, they put out cans just like the residential customers do. The remaining 216 customers on the commercial side are dumpster pickups. So on the route collections that we have two trucks that handle the majority of the residential pickups, and we have one truck that's primarily just in the commercial area. On the trucks that handle the residential, we're picking up about 8 dumpsters a day on those routes, and on the commercial truck, they pick up about 150 residential customers per week. So we then looked at what the impact would be to the route times by moving to once a week. Of course, if we're only picking it up once a week, we're picking up more trash volume per residential stop. And with that increased volume, it's going to increase our stop times. So as we had to have a multiplier, what the impact of that volume was going to be, and we used for the analysis 1.5 times to the data that we found out in the field, which increased the per stop time to 49 seconds and allows for 74 stops per hour per truck. The commercial route will have minimal impact to it. And just so you understand that better, the commercial route, as it's picking up primarily just commercial dumpsters and those that have cans set out, they pay for their service by the number of dumpsters that they have, by how many stops they want per week. So very little change is going to be seen there. So taking these and applying that multiplier to what we found out in the field, it's showing that the route hours per day on the residential side per truck would increase to a little over 7 hours per day. Currently, they're running at about 5.5 hours a day with the 2 times a week pickup. Our current schedule, as we exist today, with twice a week pickups for the residential, all routes operate 6 days a week. And each truck, there's 3 crews. They're all 3-man crews. So, of course, we have the residential pickups 2 times per week. Commercial, it collects 6 days a week. And the bulk items created through work orders by our residents are collected after the route's done as time allows. Currently, part of that beautification is getting the brush around town picked up. Currently, the street department collects all the brush. The sanitation department right now has 11 team members in it. And with 11 team members, this allows each employee to have 1 day off per week during that 6-day schedule, and also allows for coverage of vacation and sick leave. The new service schedule, once a week pickup, residential areas would be collected Monday through Wednesday. The commercial truck will continue picking up 6 days a week. But with only picking up Monday through Wednesday, now we have scheduled days for brush collection, bulky item pickups, and also for recycling. And then with this, there will be a reduction of 2 team members from the sanitation department that will be transferring into the street department. Those are currently open positions. We're not creating any new positions, so they're just strictly backfill. So with the projected savings that we're anticipating on the once a week collections, We'd have a reduction in personnel costs by 2 team members. Now, part of this, you have to keep in mind, it wouldn't be a full 2 team members because we'd be operating with 9 people in the sanitation department on the new schedule. When we have vacation, sick leave, there is going to have to be some sell back of personnel from the street department to cover those days to maintain the 3-person crews. We'd also see a reduction in operating costs in the areas of fuel, maintenance, and repair costs. As we're traveling fewer miles and operating the large sanitation trucks less frequently, we anticipate these costs to go down. This will also allow us to defer our schedule on our capital purchases for trucks. Currently, we're replacing those every 3 years. This would allow us to push those back to every 4 years. And with the savings, it also allows for a reduction in the residential rates, which is being proposed.
Mike, what is the current monthly rate for sanitation service now?
So there's 3 different levels. There's hardship, and then there's door service. But just the normal rate is $19.45 a month.
Okay. And you're looking to have a reduction of that of 2.56%.
That is correct.
That's what you're recommending.
In all 3 of those areas, yeah.
In all 3 of the rates, okay.
Yeah.
And a question that I had earlier, and I didn't bring it up, I wanted you to go through your process. How did you determine the 1.5 multiplier?
So when we looked at it, in the study and all the times that were collected, that included travel time.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I did the things out in the field when we were studying it, I'd pick them up on an alley, and I'd start the watch, then I'd count each stop that they did until they got through that block. So in observing that, they're going to drive the same distance. They're still going to get on and off the truck the same amount of times. So it was the pickup times that were actually going to increase because that volume was going to increase. So just kind of looking through, and we had to find a number. There's no perfect number until we actually put something in. We knew that volume was going to increase the times at about 20 seconds, roughly 20 seconds, just in picking up the additional trash volumes.
And as far as the capital purchases of the sanitation trucks,
Yes.
what is the cost of a sanitation truck, a full-size sanitation truck?
Full size is about $180,000. Isn't that correct? About $180,000. So currently, we've been financing them over 5 years.
Right.
So
Okay.
when we get to this next slide, and we're looking at what the savings by this new operating schedule is going to look like, keep in mind, and I got it flipped over now, keep in mind that on the capital piece of it, that's assuming that we're financing every truck purchase, everything that we're going to do over a 5-year period of time through that 15-year period. That doesn't mean that that's actually what's going to happen, but to keep it apples to apples, and specifically in 2019, how we had some things budgeted and some existing lease payments that are setting out there through 2021, we wanted to be able to compare it evenly.
Okay. So over this time period, you're looking at you're looking at 2 full-size sanitation trucks plus I don't remember the time frame. It's been probably, I don't know, a year or 2 ago. We purchased a smaller sanitation truck that's in service.
And that was purchased for just the sheer reason of CDL drivers.
Mm-hmm.
It does get much better gas mileage. It can't hold the capacity, but we did buy that used. We figured that that's also going to have to be replaced in about 5 years. We've had it about 5 years, and it'll need to be replaced every 5 years. The 1-ton pickup truck that's being asked tonight to be added to the sanitation fleet for the collection of brush, that was also with about a 10-year life cycle. The larger trucks, and there's a total of 5 larger trucks. Depending on what that service range is and the schedule of replacement, it varies. It's at about 15 years now, but we can actually extend that out to about 20 years with the reduced use of them.
So these 5 larger trucks, make sure that I'm not confused. These are in addition to the 2 large sanitation trucks and the smaller truck?
There's 5 large sanitation trucks.
Okay.
5 25-yard trucks and 1 6-yard.
Okay.
There's 6 total packer trucks.
Okay.
2 of those big ones are spares.
Oh, okay. And are there any other trucks besides what you've just mentioned?
They have a 1-ton with a Tommy lift on it. That's the bulky item truck. For bulky items, refrigerators, furniture.
Okay, so you're looking at department-wide 7 vehicles altogether then? Would that be right? Okay. And all of these would be
It would increase the 8 with the
with the
with
right?
the brush
okay.
truck.
Okay. So all these trucks would be factored into replacement over a
Yes.
certain period, and depending on the purchase or the price of the truck, in this case, the sanitation, the big trucks would be financed, have been being financed over 5 years.
Right, and we projected it out just to keep consistent on what our practice had been. And we'll get into some other things as far as cash and how that will be handled going forward. But for the analysis, we wanted to keep consistent to our current practices of financing them. So
Okay.
keep in mind on the capital piece of it, those savings, and in some cases, we're spending more. That's the difference of what the schedule would be like, the capital schedule would look like at our existing twice-a-week residential collections, and the need to replace those every 3 years, versus what a once-a-week schedule would look like for the capital purchases. So some years you're seeing some savings, the difference there. Other years, just the way it falls in there where things need to be purchased, you could see some increases. The personnel and operational savings that are reflected up there are just that. It's the savings that are being recognized that doesn't have anything to do with any of the other more fixed costs or non-variable items within our operations. And of course, the yellow line aggregately shows you the annual savings.
So right now, when we're looking at the sanitation fund, I think I had a question that Craig answered earlier today, but we're sitting on roughly, or projected for 2019,
It was around
somewhere around
$600,000. That's
$600,000
correct. That's correct.
as a surplus in the fund now.
That's right.
Okay.
Right. And and again, we'll get into that in a little bit, what that surplus means and what some of
Okay.
these additional savings annually are going to mean to us as well.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions on this particular slide and what the numbers represent there? Okay, on the next slide, this is just the department as a whole projecting it out going forward. The capital balances there in the green do represent only what is being projected or forecast to be purchased for that year. The personnel and operational cost, that includes everything within the department. And it incorporates the savings that we already discussed. And keep in mind, we used an annual inflation rate of annually on this at 1.3%, both on the revenues as well as on the expenditures. So as we go ahead and talk about some of the use of those cash balances, Louis, that you mentioned before, of course, One of the biggest driving factors is as we have those cash reserves and continue to find additional ways to save money from our operations. It's to begin using cash to purchase the capital equipment instead of financing it, so that we reduce incurring those financing costs. We also want and need to have a reserve or a surplus as we look at future initiatives for our service plans, particularly if we go to polycarts. And with that, not only you have to buy the polycarts, but you could be looking at either upgrading existing equipment for the functionality needed to lift the carts, or looking at new automated trucks. And then additionally, there had been a long-term vision to get a new sanitation facility that would also come into play here. It's critical that we keep surpluses not only for these reasons, but also it's just good, sound fiscal policy to have reserves, as well as having a slush fund or a surplus there in case of emergencies, or anytime that you have an operating issue that's an unforeseen pop-up that's going to dramatically change how you operate. And then the future initiatives that were discussed in the report that need to continue to be evaluated, that would be moving to providing polycarts to all residential services and upfitting our existing equipment for back tilt collections. We could also look at polycarts with new equipment with automated site tilt collections. Then we can also look at contracting out trash collection services, or just contracting out the commercial collections. Both of those, as we began to look into them, there's going to be some elimination of services that are provided to our citizens. And so we have to figure out how we can incorporate that in, provide some reduction and relief to the rates to the residents, but also have enough available to still fill in those needs of our beautification initiatives and providing the services that the contractors would not.
What are the advantages of the side tilt versus the back tilt?
One-man crew.
Thus the term automated.
Yeah, the automated, they sit in the truck, they drive up, it's got a side tilt, picks it up, dumps it back down, and you go to the
Gotcha.
next stop.
But it has to be,
With the back tilts, you still have three-man crews, and they're manually pulling the trash cans over and placing them at the truck and throwing the handle.
yeah, I'm still having a little trouble understanding how do you automate it? And I mean, the polycar has to be sitting right there.
It has to be curbside.
Yep, everything
Everything will
would,
be curbside.
yes,
Wait a minute, so not in the alley?
No,
correct.
It would have to be, you have to put it right where the truck can get it. You can't put it on the inside of the curb, you have to put it on the outside, on the street level, so if it's not, the truck will just drive by. They can't reach it with their arm, but you train your residents how to do that, but you have to go to curbside
Okay.
So,
to keep that advantage.
Good to know.
and with the polycarts, a couple of major things, you would have uniformity. Actually, number one, you improve safety. You don't have our people out lifting cans, reaching over fences, whatnot. It would be pulling the polycart to the truck, or just setting there for the single driver to pick up with a side tilt. And then it also, with the uniformity and the efficiency, that it also plays a big part in the beautification initiative.
This might be a question more for Mr. Passeur, but I know my wife is a fanatical recycler, and I volunteered out there Saturday at the recycling center. I know a lot of people do recycle. So do we have more and more homes that don't have trash both days of their pickup? Do you know? Because I mean, some days we don't have any trash to put out.
right. Some people just use one day of their 2
Yeah.
days.
Yeah, so that was the other thing when we were doing the field study. As I was looking, I saw some places that said, surely there can't be doing this twice a week, putting this much out. We were also driving by houses that didn't have anything out. So we think that some people are already
Yeah.
utilizing the once a week.
Yeah. It's nice to have the twice a week.
And I just I just note that we tried to be conservative, obviously, in estimating savings and costs and time allowed. Like I say, there's a lot of houses that already do once a week, but, you know, and again, we try to be conservative, so we were sure we can do it once a week with the structure as proposed.
Yeah, I mean, you can put together any plan, but if you can't execute it, then the plan's not worth anything. So we wanted to make sure through the study and how we put everything together that it is executable.
But so if somebody's asking me a question about this, about what they're going to pay, right now they pay about $20.
Correct.
Right, a month. And with the new plan, so $20 would get them twice a week. For once a week, they're going to pay $19.50.
It's $19.45, and that
Roughly.
reduction would drop it down to under $19 per month. So it's not huge.
Right.
But
right.
with that, we're picking up the same.
2.5%.
Yeah, we're picking up the same volume of trash. We're also providing for scheduled services to pick up these bulky items, to assist the street department in the collection of brush, clean up the city. And then in addition to that, the plan also calls for, I'm sure you've seen the dumpsters that have been being placed throughout town for the last month or so. The plan is going forward to continue doing that on a once a month or maybe 2 times a month basis to allow citizens to further clean things up.
Surely we'll get caught up with that.
You would think.
Because
You would think.
They're
that-
terrible eyesores right now. I don't know who this question is directed to, maybe the other commissioners or maybe Craig, but, you know, when I first saw the plan that one of our biggest goals was beautification of the city, I was thrilled. And when I saw one of the steps was to reduce the number of trash pickups, I'm thinking, boy, that's about as counterintuitive as I could imagine. I picture if we want to beautify the city, we'll pick up trash more often, not less often, because in our alley, it tends to pile up. So I'm not sure I'm buying that that's really a beautification effort. Am I confused or?
But it's the beginning step of it, and I understand your concern there. You're right. You're going to have more trash setting out there with less frequent pickups.
Right.
But we are able to now start addressing some of these areas and getting these bulky items collected and getting the brush collected. And then by further setting out those dumpsters for the community to access, at least on a monthly basis, they can eliminate some of that debris and additional trash.
Has the public been open to this? Have you gentlemen heard many comments?
I've had some questions, just
Oh,
like
Yeah, go ahead.
you, that, it's 2 day a week is a benefit for the citizens, and some are concerned with the amount of trash that would accumulate. I've noticed some residents that each pickup, they've got 2 cans and they're full and running over. By eliminating 1 pickup a week on Mondays with the Monday holidays, then you're going to be 2 weeks out. There's one question.
It would just push the schedule back.
Any holiday, Monday to Wednesday.
Okay.
So your trash days the next day.
That's what they were wondering,
That-
how
we've
that
got
would
that
work.
figured out.
Okay.
Yeah, nobody's
Yeah,
trash is gonna
I didn't
stay
see that in the report, and
the
that,
same. Yeah, it's more
so
of my
that was a question that
Yeah.
came up to me when they heard the information of
Got that figured out.
how,
So-
conveying the information.
Another thing that I've wondered about, if, let's say that we decide to do this, and it's an absolute disaster, how hard is it to say, okay, that was a bad idea, let's change back to twice a week? Would it be a big deal to
It's
change
not
back?
hard, but I don't anticipate it to be a disaster.
Really? You seem very confident.
I know my
That's
guys
great.
are-
Well, I have tremendous respect for you, but I haven't had anybody ever come up to me and say, I'd really like to go to a once-a-week trash pickup. And I've had lots of people say, no, wait, I like my twice a week.
Look around the rest of the country.
It is going to that, and I think that should your scenario occur, along the way, the further analysis for these other service plans is going to be underway. So you could certainly look at implementing one of those. Of course, with the poly carts, you can fit a lot more trash in there, and then each customer could get additional poly carts if they needed them.
Remember, this is part of the strategic-based community plan that we did. That came out as one of the goals and the key initiatives. I think it is in beautification. That's where it is. Key initiative, once a week, and look at what was the term? Not restructuring, but
Reconfiguring.
Reconfiguring to go to once a week. So I mean, to us, that was a backing of the community saying, yeah, that's what we support. Obviously, not everybody does.
So this would be a phase one, and maybe we stop at phase one. But
That's what, with Gary, his comment about for beautification, now you reduce the pickup to once a week, that seems counterproductive. But then, you know, I think I struggled with the idea of initiating a change, but then we're still going to look at other plans. I think to make a decision, we should have all plans laid out so we make the move once. You know, you look at this is one method to go to once a week trash pickup, but then the polycart. If we go to polycart, what's that going to be the impact? What are the changes there? If we go to contract pickup, you know, what's that going to present the community? It should be, in my opinion, it should be all at once.
And that would be ideal as we were doing this. But to get this
why does it need to? Why rush?
To get it implemented sooner. Now, any of these future initiatives, they would all be with once a week pickup. So we'd already be in that step, and we'd already be programming our citizens on that. We're only going to come once a week and make these collections.
Yeah, it just to make a decision without looking at all of our options at the same time, so we can do a comparative analysis and go one direction. That to me seems a logical process, instead of going now with one, buying another truck, and then come back and say, well, you know, contract service is really best. Now we retract. And even if we go with contract services, like you mentioned, we've got some benefits with large item pickups. You know, we should look at how all that's going to implement in a plan for each case, instead of just say, well, we want to get this initiated. Somebody, you know, the committee said this is what we need to do. We need to move. We need to go now. And then later on, we're going to look at that's like, you know, you go out and build a house. I just want to get in, but then you don't plan for the other amenities to go with it. But I'll do that later on.
Well, certainly on, you know, we are looking at purchasing the 1-ton truck, but that's going to be for brush collections. We're not looking at buying a new sanitation truck in 2019.
No, I meant the brush truck.
I think one way or another
should have.
One way or another, I think that's going to be in place with any of those initiatives, because particularly on the contracting it out, you're going to lose a lot of those services, particularly the bulky item pickups. So they're not going to pick up brush. So,
but that's where we look at the whole picture, the whole plan, the whole options, to see how that is going to lay out in each scenario. Then we make our decision based upon all the facts, not make this decision now. Now we've made this. Okay, now let's look at this. Now do we want to go there and back up on this? Or so no, we'll stay here. Now let's look at a third one and come back and compare that to the one that we just made. You know, I think we should have 1, 2, 3 and compare them all, and then make a decision on which way is going to be assumed at the time the best. Just my thought.
No,
I don't see a problem with phasing some of these things in. Now, if in a perfect world, I mean, I come from a background of contracting out and negotiated 2 contracts, contracting out. And I can tell you without even, and we've kind of hinted on it, you know, you're going to if you put an RFQ out for contracting to do what we do today, you wouldn't get any bidders, or you'd get a bidder and say, we'll do this, but we won't do all these, because the services that we do provide now. So we know going to contracting would be radical. So I don't see any issue with kind of a phased approach, if you will, right now to go to once a week. That was the major goal, was to get to once a week, and then moving forward from that. I mean, it's just, it's,
But-
that's,
but with-
and again, without really going through an actual bidding process, you wouldn't know, because what services are you going to ask a private contractor to provide? All the things we do now, again, you won't get that.
No, but then that's where you fill in with what we have to give back. We've got the contract service, and then how do we fill in those other pieces that they're not going to do, so that we get to the same point, only it's a combination of contract plus what we're going to have to pick up if we provide that service, or whether we quit. But, it's just the thing, we don't just stop with contracting, but then if we contract out, we say, well, we're losing the large item pickup, so does that come part of the street department now? And now we have to add staff to do that, or transfer it over? Or, do we look at putting a grounds crew that mows and picks up brush, so street department can dedicate to maintaining streets
Right,
and
that
do
would
that.
all-
So,
And that would all be
there's-
coming out of the general fund,
Yeah,
an expense which we don't have now in the general fund.
Well,
Some, but
yeah. But the cost of the sanitation is basically the same concept as a tax. So, we just have to adjust the general fund and to cover that if we're going to have that service, and we're going to have the money to do it. If the public want large item pickups, then we're going to have to put that in the budget and general fund to do it.
I had sent an email hoping there was some more information in addition to what we've already got already. It's basically, it's a plan of attack that you've set up, in communities where they've had once a week sanitation services forever. The people have adapted to it well. I have family that live in McPherson. That's one of the cleanest towns you'll ever be in. But they've had, over a period of years, a strong, not only ordinances on the books to enforce concerning blight and items along that nature. They were able to dedicate the resources to make sure that was enforced. And we've kind of, over the years treated this as a secondary job. In other words, a person already had duties assigned to them, and this was something that they did when time allowed, in addition to the job that they were hired to do. So, but it all ties together. The dumpsters, having dumpsters out to where people can take that trash or that debris, not trash, but some of those big items that they have a place to get rid of and fill a dumpster. To me, I have no idea how much big debris is out there. I mean, as far as tonnage, I've seen enough of it. I know there's a lot of it out there. And even though we're having the dumpsters out there for an extra month, we could probably leave the dumpsters out there every week for, I'd hate to put a month or year on it, but I would imagine we would probably continually to fill them up as fast as
I
we
would
could set
agree.
them out there.
Just seeing some of the
Because
things.
there's a lot of big ticket items out there, a lot of stuff that's still sitting. We just made a small little speck of a dent in that. So all this ties together. Not only the sanitation pickup, but how are you going to do that? Is the poly cart something that we want to look at and go into, and what the cost is? But I would like to see all this laid out a little more thoroughly, so we can kind of look at everything and then proceed from that point. What are we going to take out of this plan that we think is workable and it's good? And then if that's something that is not going to, if we're not going to be able to do big ticket items, and how are we going to address that? Because people are used to seeing us provide that, And I'm sure they're not going to want to see that go away. So then how do we backfill that? Who's going to be responsible for that?
And we have that covered outside of
You
the
know.
contracting piece of it. So.
So, but yeah, I would like to see like the cost of retrofitting the trucks, the cost involved in that.
You know, on that, you're probably looking, by the time you buy the polys and doing those upfits to the trucks, you know, you're probably looking at close to $300,000 just on that. Looking at if you go with the site tilt automated machine, of course, you're going to have a reduction in staffing, but you're going to have to purchase 3 new trucks or 2 new trucks and a used one for a backup. Plus the polys, and you're looking at close to $700,000 for that initiative.
And we're going to set the trash out in the street.
And it'd be
If you went with that
residential
system.
curbside. Hey, and you know, I've got to experience this when I moved to Bartlesville. We had trash collections just as we do right here. Twice a week, you throw out your containers. It was great, and they let us know that they were going to go to the automated machine, and you're going to have 1 dumpster. 1 time a week pickup, and I thought, oh my goodness, how am I ever going to survive? This isn't going to work. Well, after experiencing it for a while, it works very well, and everything down there is curbside.
Yeah, Tulsa does it now. They do their sanitation pickup and they do recycling, and they're 2 different colored receptacles that they use. And recycling they pick up, and it's curbside. They pick up one day, and sanitation they pick up another day. And they've done that now for, at least with this vendor here, for at least a couple of years. And I don't know how many years that program has been implemented, but it's curbside and it works. I mean, from what I've seen, so it's just different. It's something different that we've not seen or experienced here. It doesn't mean that it can't work, but
I'm just having trouble living on a busy street on 10th Street. We're going to set our trash out in 10th Street, out in the street, for the truck to come by and pick up. It's going to sit there overnight.
You
Yes.
might,
And on Main Street, for example. So we're going to have the Main Street line. And cars aren't going to hit them? I just can't imagine
They'll
that.
have their flashing, I mean, they'll have flashing lights on, obviously, they're a large,
No, the
Vehicle.
The trash cans. I'm
Yeah,
talking about the
there's
trash
portions of
people mowing
town
over
that-
the trash cans.
There's portions of town that is curbside right now. It's not picked up in the alley.
Understand, but not Main Street or Penn or 10th
I doubt
Street.
it On
Well,
Main Street, where the
Main Street
highway
is.
is, you can put them in the street.
You can?
I don't think you could. I don't think KDOT would allow it.
Yeah, I don't see how you could. Oh, well.
I'm trying to think, because that's a system we had, you know, like say in previous communities. And I'm trying to think on major roads. I can't think of that situation like 10th Street. I mean, we had a major street going through, but it's mostly commercial. I'm just thinking maybe on a street like that, you can set them inside the curb. You know, truck could still-
right at the edge of the curb, still off
truck
the
could still
street,
get it,
but
I
But
think they do go on the grass side of the curb.
you'd have to, I think, you know, just to,
Then you have to mow. What if your yard's 2 foot long?
well, hopefully.
Well, that would be a good thing getting them mowed then, right?
Remember, you can't put your garbage cans out too soon.
Yeah.
No sooner than 24 hours.
With the automated side tilt, that's
So the rear tilt, they could still be in the alley
Right,
and still work
Right.
with the tilt.
yeah.
I mean, that's what we're talking about level of service, and the main thing, and especially from the plan, was to go to once a week, and all these scenarios we're talking about is once a week. And how fast do we get to that automate, you know, that's the question, is what's our level of service, and do we want to maintain that? I mean, the residents now are dumping stuff in there, and if you really wanted to partner with the residents to improve the beautification, and we could do a lot more if we followed the code. I think you know the code right now on brush pickup, it's got to be 6 foot,
4 foot?
4 foot, some are 6, but 4 foot
5 pound or less.
and bundled. Now, if they did that, we could pick up so much more brush.
We have yards in our neighborhood where the whole yard is filled with brush.
So
Mountains of
there's,
it.
it's that level of service right now. You put it out there, we'll eventually get it, haul it away for you.
My gut feeling is the reason so many people said they want to go to 1 day a week trash pickups, they think they're going to save half their cost. They think they're going to save more. I'm just saying, that's what I believe, is people say, well, you know, it's very expensive to live here, our property taxes are so high, I hear that every single day, so if we're paying $20 a month now, if we just have picked up 1 day a week, it'd only be $10 a month, which of course is not the case.
We average 120 tons a week. That's not gonna change.
I'm just saying, that's why I think people said they want to go to 1 day a week, because they think they're going to save a bunch of money. I still don't see that being a beautification effort. I'm not making that connection somehow. You know, maybe if we're doing everything else, we're doing better brush pickup, large item pickup, that kind of thing, maybe it is a beautification effort.
Like, they always have the option to recycle more.
Yes, I wish everyone would. It's nice that we can take it on Tuesdays now. I know we're
I mean,
getting,
that's, again, level of service. What do you provide? Like you mentioned that other city, they do curbside recycling, which again, that's what I'm familiar with, curbside recycling.
Yeah,
You put
that's
that
what we
out
had.
on a designated day, not a different day than your trash. And the same thing, automated. You put it curbside, they dump it, recycling. But there's no vendor like Republic, they don't have a recycling,
They don't do recycling.
they don't do it.
Waste Connections doesn't, nobody around here will do recycling.
So we'd still have to run our own program if we wanted to continue recycling. Or are you bringing it down?
So basically, the area vendors are just sanitation pickup, and that's all?
Well, that's where we'd have to open up. There was one vendor that had contacted me that would do recycling a couple
Okay.
years ago. Maybe 3 or 4 years ago, they mentioned that they had visited with the former city manager about giving a proposal and would do recycling and everything at the house. But, you know, it just, you have to send out the proposal to see what you're going to get and where they're going to come from. Like some of the vendors, do you do recycling in Bartlesville?
No, they do
You
not.
don't?
And it's city operated.
City operated
Yes,
there
it
too?
is.
Okay.
Yeah.
And most of the recycling, I think, are third party or,
And it could be.
Yeah.
I'm, you know, at least from a residential, you know, you go set out your recyclables, there's nothing.
Yeah.
I'm sure that there's some program down there that does provide for that, just
Yeah.
like we're doing today. You get your stuff and you bring it down to a location and you do it yourself.
I'm not for sure how Tulsa does. They've got the blue and the green
Right.
poly carts, and I think, you know, when you look at going to, like you're saying, Gary, if you can only save $1, then I'd rather pay $1 and get it 2 times a week. But if you're going to go to once a week, and now I've got a blue poly cart for recycling, so I don't have to keep it in my garage or something. I put it in, and now you're going to curbside pick up recyclables. I think then it becomes more attractive to go to the once a week trash pickup, because you see the benefit, but just to reduce for the sake of going to once a week and saying we're beautifying. And again, you know, I like to think if we have them all to compare, then we can make a better decision.
Remember, it's not just beautification. I mean, we are saving money, and for the reasons we noted, future down the road, you know, we can reduce our costs in purchasing equipment instead of financing, which we've talked a lot about, you know, keeping that down, saving for the future expenditures. So it's not just beautification. I mean, we are saving money with this initial plan.
Mayor, who was that vendor you talked to? Do you remember the company?
I've got it at home. I can let you know.
That'd be helpful. Thank you.
On the recycling that Tulsa does, there's a list of items that can go into that receptacle, and you don't have to, you just dump it all in, and it goes to a recycling center, and then they sort it out
Single stream.
at that point. So, okay. Gentlemen, any other questions?
I don't have any more.
Okay. Gary?
It's great information. You know, if you gentlemen feel real strongly one way or the other, I don't feel strongly either way. I have some doubts about going to 1 day a week pickup, but I'm a huge Mike Passeur fan. Anything he tells me he can do, I believe it because he's proved it over and over and over. I don't know if people are going to say, well, this was worth saving $1 a month to go to 1 day a week pickup. I don't know. My gut is maybe not. But I'm good either way, whatever you guys think.
You know, I still think we need to look at them all at once to make a decision.
The feedback I got from the community, the few that would come up and have concern about it, they wanted to know how, like you indicated, how going to once a week sanitation pickup was going to somewhat improve the odds of the city of Independence beautification, looking better with trash being just picked up just once a week. And then they were also concerned with if that would eliminate jobs, people in the sanitation department. And I was explaining to them that there are other duties that they do.
Once a week would eliminate 2. Contracting out would eliminate 9.
Right.
11.
11. Yes.
And the 2 wouldn't actually, they would just be transferred back over, transferred into the street department.
That's
So
what
they
I'm
would
saying,
just be
right?
changing departments.
Right, but the other 9, yes, would be later.
Okay. Okay.
If you contract out your recycling, like I said, chance of having recycling.
And same if you went with poly carts with side pickup,
Yeah,
because you're losing 2 per truck,
yeah.
unless you
It's
can,
automated with poly carts, you need 1 driver. That's it.
unless you can transfer over to street department and then work with picking up brush or doing maintenance on streets or pick up large items with the offset employees.
I believe street has enough to do without picking up bulky items.
Well, no, but the displaced employees could come over to the street department and as part of street department.
There's only room for 2 now
Mhm.
that are funded.
Mhm.
So if you bring any more over, then you're gonna change. budget.
That's correct.
Or they can be retained and stay within the department and handle those additional duties.
Right.
Or you change the full service of sanitation to being large item pickup or sanitation, only they don't pick up trash.
Right.
But they would have-
A lot of plans.
Contract out, if we retain
Yeah.
anybody, they have to be funded somehow.
Yeah, with every problem, there's a solution, at least one.
That's
Yeah.
not-
With every problem, there's a solution.
I understand that.
Well, this additional information that you've given us tonight about the retrofit and the poly carts of $300,000, and then the side tilt, which would involve 2 new and a used sanitation truck and the poly carts at a $700,000 total cost. I would like to digest some of this information you've given to us. I don't.
And just keep in mind, those are estimates.
Right.
Just throwing it out.
I understand.
We haven't
I
dug
would
all the
like-
way in yet.
Yeah. I would like to go ahead and see if we could get more information and look at the scenarios, at how they're going to play out, and then lay everything out and determine which is the best option to go for, and then how are we going to handle those services that still need to be, that we're still going to provide, and work at it from that. I'm not real comfortable about moving and making approving this as it stands right now. That's my own personal opinion. So, but I'd like to at least take a look at that and then come back with it, and then bring it up again, and then kind of lay everything out, see what we're looking at, and maybe that will get us a better idea of a little closer to what costs are going to be, especially with the retrofit. and give us an idea to look at the retrofit versus the side tilt and see which one might be more compatible as far as dollar-wise, cost-wise, and kind of moving that. At least give us a better idea of what direction we want to move in. So I like the information that you've given us so far, but I think I'd like to see a little bit more detail on some of these other options.
So take no action tonight.
Yeah, that's my take.
Are you wanting them to look at the curbside recycling too?
Yeah, I think so.
I think we need a total picture.
Yeah, let's look at, if we're going to revamp this, let's look at what's available out there and what we can accomplish with it.
You know, we moved here from Wichita, and we had the, one poly cart for trash once a week and another poly cart for recycling once a week, everything commingled. And then it was just very easy. You have these gigantic carts, and I can put anything recycle on the recycle one. So then the once a week pickup was a piece of cake. But I'm just not sure just going to it now in our current system is the best option. So I too would like to.
It's a level of service, and that's what I'm used to as well. Recycling, you have the blue bin, and you throw what's acceptable in there.
Right, and if we can't do it, we can't do it, but I'd
But
just like to.
you have to pay you pay for that can. You pay for a can of trash, you pay for a can of recycling, and when you get into recycling where you haven't, curbside, where you haven't done it before, do you make it mandatory for everybody to buy one of those, or do you have an opt-in or an opt-out? There's lots of variables. There's so many variables when you say, let's look at everything. You really need to determine what's the level of service you're going to have.
Fair enough.
So you're open, I guess my question is, you're open to reducing the level of service, i.e. from what we do now, which is picking up everything. Going to like once a month bulk pickup, just once a month, not as other cities do. All right.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you, Mike. Mike. Okay. Next item for Commission Action B, consider a request from the Independence Historical Preservation and Resource Commission to approve placing buildings and structures located at Riverside Park and Ralph Mitchell Zoo on the local historic registry.
Mayor, Tim Haynes and Ken Brown are here. I believe Tim Haynes is going to speak to you, and I will turn it over to him.
All right. Hi, Tim. How are you? And Ken, how are you?
Good. Thanks for entertaining our presence here tonight. So in 2002, the City of Independence passed an ordinance that established the Historic Preservation Commission. Our mission is to identify and protect historic properties that represent our rich architectural and cultural heritage. It's a part of our identity, and we have, bar none, some of the finest examples of period architecture in the whole country in this town, and I think that's something we need to recognize, and not just recognize here, but recognize with plaques and signage and publications and other documents that we can share with visitors to our town who may not know about those structures. So we're here tonight to request, I'll say that nobody can be registered without their consent, so I can't nominate somebody's property to be registered on our local registry without the property owner's consent. You all are the property owners of the properties we're here to discuss tonight, which are the Park Office, aka the Garden House, the Tennis Club House, the Duck Pond, and the Sexton's House at the cemetery, which are all 4 WPA projects, New Deal projects, of great historic significance for that time period. The Monkey Island also was an Independence Employment Committee project dated 1931, and the band shell built in 1953, all significant contributors to the overall historic nature of the park and zoo, which, as you all would agree, is one of our greatest assets and very unique in this part of the country, that we have a park and zoo that is as beloved as ours is in this community and beyond. And these are historic contributors to the character of that park and zoo. So the 4 WPA projects, the Monkey Island and Band Shell, we're requesting the city's permission to add those to the local historic registry. You probably also know that there are different levels of jurisdiction with regard to protecting and identifying historic properties. There's the U.S. federal government's Department of the Interior, which holds the federal jurisdiction for historic properties. There's also the Kansas State Historical Society, and then our local Historic Preservation Commission. So those three levels of jurisdiction are all concerned with historic preservation. These ones we anticipate to be added to our local registry, pending your decision tonight.
This mentions the cemetery wall. I don't think you just mentioned that, did you?
We didn't, our motion didn't include the wall.
Our list includes the wall.
Yeah,
So who added it?
I saw that.
We've discussed it at our previous couple of meetings. I don't have any clarification on that. I'm wondering if Ken might.
So it doesn't have to be a building. I mean, it can be a wall.
It doesn't exclusively have to be a building. Those are probably the most common features, but then again, what is a building? The band shell itself is a structure, but not an enclosed building as such. If that kind of answers the question. So non-enclosed structures can be added to the registry as well. But that is basically left to the purview of the local governing body to determine that based on its significance.
What are the drawbacks for the city of doing this? Are we more restricted in what we can do with them once we do this, or?
There have been.
Only if there requires a building permit are we triggered for a review. So the example I gave Dave was if you want to add a tin shed onto the tennis clubhouse for a bathroom, you would have to come to us for a certificate of appropriateness. And actually, the final say would be with the commission anyway. We only make comment just as the state and the federal government do.
So if a windstorm came along and lifted up that band shell and rolled it over on its back, then are we now required to spend a lot of money to make it like it was? If this, okay.
Because it wouldn't require a building permit.
Okay.
I mean, if it was destroyed.
And ADA, what about ADA? Some of those buildings are not ADA compliant.
I believe it's only, again, if a permit has to be pulled for that, and there are certain accommodations made for the historical character of the property. Without divulging details, I can just say we considered one such concern at our last meeting, where a building was not completely compliant with ADA in certain respects.
Right. Of course not. Not at that age.
But there were alternatives in place already that were deemed suitable. So it wasn't out of compliance. It wasn't compliant to the degree that I suppose was desirable to the state. It wasn't non-compliant. However, they wanted a second ADA entrance in a location on a building, and they already had one which was suitable and even in a more convenient location for pedestrians. So we basically said, and for very good reason, because of the nature of the modifications to the structure would have to have been made, that we didn't think it was in the best interests of historic preservation to damage the building to install a second redundant ADA entrance.
Gotcha.
But you don't have power to override the ADA if it's required. Because
I don't believe so.
But there is, by some recognition of historic significance, I think there is a section in the ADA that gives consideration and more leeway to it. So that's the advantage.
Right. We found that to be true like in the in-house too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's really the sole purpose of this is really to draw attention to start recognizing significant structures in town. And
yes,
with that, then it brings your committee in play to do research and bring out those highlights so that they will be preserved. There's not an enforceable fine or anything that the committee has, but what it does, it sets in motion that engagement of your committee that the whole community can benefit by the preservation. And is a band shell already listed?
That's what we're here to discuss tonight. We're basically,
Supposed to be.
No, it's not on the list either.
okay.
We meant for it to be on the list.
Yes, we did. We meant for 6 structures to be on the list, not including, which basically the 6 structures do not include the cemetery wall. The 6 structures that we intended to be on the list are the park office, the tennis clubhouse, the duck pond, the sexton's house, which is at the cemetery, Monkey Island, and the band shell.
Okay, Monkey Island. What about the shelter house?
That one is already on the
Is
registry.
it already?
Yeah. I actually have the form here, which coincidentally is the shelter house nomination form.
Okay.
So you're right, Commissioner Kaflish, that this is intended to be foremost a method to recognize historic properties and to, I guess, rally the public opinion that it's worth preserving, to remind everyone it's a part of our history, it's a part of our identity, and also to make others aware who are new to this community or who otherwise are just interested that it's something we're proud of.
So with the designation, you mentioned plaques or some form to identify these for tourists or the public. With this, you would be adding a freestanding plaque or something to the facility to
The same
identify it?
Using in the downtown that Tim and I work on.
Yeah.
Made 5 yesterday.
So it's a relatively
Okay.
simple design which provides context and visually appealing, installed in a location that's not distracting or obtrusive, does no damage to the building or the structure as it's installed, and are very cost effective to produce. We can make them here in town. We don't have to order them out. All of that is, I guess, kind of a separate discussion from this, which is basically, are you willing to allow those 6 properties to be added to our local historic registry?
Yeah, I think that really does tie in those so we can fully understand how far this takes. Because I think just to say, yeah, put them on the list and just leave them on some list, it doesn't really tie the significance of what you're requesting, but to get the explanation of the engagement of your committee, to draw attention, to preserve, to maintain and spread the word that these were significant. And with the plaque is how that's one method, the way it's going to happen. I think what you're sharing really brings light to what you're asking more than just, yeah, put them on a list.
Yes, accompanying the addition to our list would be the creation of plaques, which would be installed at all of those locations.
I think it's great. Sometimes we're in a rush to put up something that's new and shiny and overlook a structure that, for a lack of maintaining, we're willing to kick that down the road and put up something that's shiny and flashy. And but this is part of the history of the community, and structures like that, they need to be not only be recognized but pointed out the significance they play in the community, and it's just as much as part of the community as the park and the zoo itself. You know, it's something that for a lot of us we understand because we've been around here long enough to have a better understanding of that. But for people that have come here and not lived in the area, and they bring their kids, and then they get an appreciation of the community that they've established their roots in for whatever time period, and begin to appreciate the significance of the historical nature of the city itself. So, yeah, I think that's great.
So, do you want the cemetery wall also, or?
Take a lot of plaques.
Yeah, it would. You know, let's-
10 miles long.
Let's not include the wall for now.
Okay.
I'm assuming it was added by staff. Barb, must have added up. When I saw the RCA, that was the list. I wasn't aware that you had not generated that list, but I'm assuming that Barb added that.
If you wanted us to be open to adding every single structure at the park and zoo, I don't think we're going to say, well, no thanks. But at the same time, at the present time, I believe the cemetery wall is beyond the scope of what we're capable of doing right now. But at a later date, I'm sure we would love to discuss that option.
But it does identify Independence.
Very
Yes, it
much.
does.
It's very visible. It's a very visible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is also a New Deal construction project.
Right.
And maybe by modifying the sign that goes on the sexton's office to identify the wall at that one point, instead of trying to find a significant place on the wall itself.
Yes, and modifying whatever plaques that are installed would be very, very easy to do
Yeah.
at a later time.
Well, and since it's on your agenda, I say leave it on there. Or,
While you're here,
yeah, sure.
If there are no objections, I suppose,
So-
let's do it.
We're easy.
Leave the cemetery
So
wall
easy.
on there, okay. Okay, gentlemen, anything else? Good?
good.
We're all good? Ken? Tim, thank you very much for your
Thank you.
presentation.
Thank you.
So I'm going to make a motion. I move to authorize the Independence Preservation and Resource Commission permission to begin the process of placing the following structures on the Independence Historical Registry. And those include the park office, the duck pond, the tennis clubhouse, the Sexton House, Monkey Island, the band shell, and the cemetery wall.
I second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Okay, item C. Consider an agreement between the City of Independence and USD 446 for ADA work on school property.
Mayor, I wanted to say Pastor Kaiser had a medical procedure, and he'll be here at the next meeting. We have met, but due to that procedure, he wanted a chance to be able to visit with you, so that's why he's not here tonight. But we will have that at the next meeting. Sean is here. We do have the contract for the school, and I know Commissioner Kaflish had asked a question about the difference. So in what we had initially told you,
Original $23,000 we discussed was based on the estimate and not the bid. The 18,000 is based on the bid, and I may have misspoken at a previous commission meeting regarding that, but the 18,000 that's in the contract is based on the bid. So.
Yeah, I went back to the notes and then the video and the way it was presented, and it was at the time of the award of the contract. And, you said that you'd had extensive meetings with the school, and
Yeah,
it
and
came
that-
across that since we were discussing the $66,000 alternate for that work on Oak Street, that the $23,000 was part of that 66,000.
Yeah, and that was based on our original estimate, which those items were slightly under our estimate.
Okay.
That's why
So the
it's-
66,000 was also,
That-
that was your estimate?
That 66,000 was the bid.
Oh, okay.
But the 23,000 was a number we discussed with the schools
Okay.
sometime earlier, and we did not change that during discussions until we've written the contract. Yeah.
Yeah, because it was, got to look after the city dollars.
Right.
That's our job.
Yep.
Understand.
And the 76 cents is what really threw me off. I knew you were serious when you put 76 cents. If it had been 0 no cents, I never would have questioned.
Yeah.
That 76
Yeah, that's-
cents means business.
That's key. Okay, have you looked at the drawings? You had any questions, gentlemen, on the layout of what's proposed?
I have no questions, Mr. Mayor.
My only question was the difference in the two figures.
Figures? Okay. Okay. All right, if there's no further questions, do I have a motion?
I move to authorize the mayor to sign the agreement with USD 446 for ADA improvements on school property.
Second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Sean. Okay, the next item is discussion. Discussion on marketing Building D.
Yeah, this was brought up during the discussion of City Hall, and you wanted to discuss it, so that's why we placed it on the agenda for that purpose.
Mr. Mayor, since Tricia Purden is here, could I invite her to come up and discuss this with us?
Sure.
She's here for
Okay.
the next item anyway.
All right.
Tricia, I know we have people approach MAC with some regularity looking for commercial property in Montgomery County. Is there some way we could list this with you, or?
Yes, absolutely. So our Location One software that's integrated in our website, it's a national database for site selectors that use that. So commercial business entities that are looking for a location, it's a national database, so they'd be able to use that, and it obviously costs you nothing. It's part
That's
of
our
our website
favorite
for
price.
free. So
We love to hear
it's
that.
free. I'm not a realtor, so you don't have to. You guys pay me to do this for you already. So if that's something you want me to do, I would happily work with city staff, get the numbers, the specs of the building that you might already have on file, and Paula and I will get that entered on Location One, and it doesn't cost you a thing.
Is there any good way to come up with a price we want to ask?
And that's where you get out of my expertise, is I'm not a realtor, to find out what the comps might be on a former hospital facility. I can quickly see if anyone has that information they'd be willing to share with us as an economic development partner with our realtors that we do have, and I can get back to you if that helps.
I just wondered if that, since you're working for free, I want you to do everything you can possibly get.
Well, you
to do.
pay me, but
right.
yes, the database is free as part of our membership with the Kansas Economic Development Alliance. But we can look and see what those are. I know the manufacturing square foot average cost that we're seeing across southeast Kansas, northeast Oklahoma, but for a commercial space like this, it would be a little different. But I can check with Kansas Department of Commerce, and the Location One database administrator actually out of Kansas City, they might have that data as well. So that might be easy to pull, and we can find out if there's something like that. So.
We could contact the company that David George worked with. He was a contact with the party that was interested, and they're large-scale commercial realtors, so maybe they would have information and also might be interested in listing it from Wichita.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to that. It just seems like since we have this wonderful resource that people nationwide, if they're looking for a hospital building, an old hospital building, it's available. It can't be that many of them out there,
Right.
although we have had more and more closures. But
Now, you can do both. I mean, we'll put it on ours no matter what. If you decide to go with
Right.
a realtor, go with NAI Martin, which is
I think the
David
more
George used worked.
the better.
So.
One time, the Department of Corrections was looking at a healthcare facility for geriatric prisoners that still hadn't fulfilled their time, but their health was diminished. So I don't know, the Secretary of Department of Corrections might be a good contact too.
thanks, Tricia.
Thank you, Trish. I should have brought that. I had a document out I was going to bring. I had talked to the vice president of Martin's here quite a while back. He had gotten back with me about the building itself, and I had gone to their website, and they had several medical clinics on the website for sale in the Wichita and surrounding area of properties that they were trying to market. And at the time, he had just indicated that if we were still interested in marketing the facility, that he had worked with David George out of Coffeyville, and he would be willing to help us if we were interested in going that direction. And I wish I would have brought that. I laid it out, and I forgot, and I don't remember his name right off the bat, but I can get that name and bring it forward to the next meeting. But I did have a short phone conversation with him about the facility. So
My guess, and I'm not a real estate expert, but I'm guessing it'd take a long time to sell something like this. So I don't see any reason not to at least list it with Tricia.
Oh, definitely.
And
Definitely.
I'm going to take this opportunity to say something I've said before over and over, which is if we have buildings the city owns that we're not using, I think we need to be looking at plans to dispose of them or whatever. I'm on the board of Community Chest. We had an auction in our old EMS building over there, and the thing is in bad shape, and I don't know why we're just sitting on an empty building. Same with the one across the street here and right behind us. I'm sure we bought this one for the purpose of a parking lot, although it was long before my time. But if this home, we don't want to bring it down to make a parking lot. It's a fabulous home.
Right.
If we're not going to bring it down and make a parking lot, I think we should sell it. If we are going to make a parking lot, let's make a parking lot. But I don't like the idea of having the city own these buildings that are not being used for anything. And that includes this one. If we're going to be moving back to City Hall, I'd like to start exploring options for this building. I know you can't get what it would cost out of it to build it new. Obviously, if somebody wanted to pay that much, they'd build a new one. But, you know, my downtown building I just bought, they say when they come out to insure it, the insurance company says it would cost $600,000 to rebuild it.
Mm-hmm.
So a building like this has got to have significant value to someone, if we can find that someone.
And
then
one thing, looking at the value, is the dollar amount, but then to bring in a new business.
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
economic impact
Right.
is beyond the value that the building is. So there's two costs to look at, and a lot of times it's how much money they're willing to put down is what it's worth. But I think the more, if we're not using something, we don't need to be maintaining and get it on the tax roll too. Then.
absolutely.
So, could we have a list of the facilities that the city owns?
Sure.
And we can start looking at the condition of them, and then, like I said, if they're not being used, then let's see if there's a buyer for these facilities, and we can get them on the tax roll. So that's something that we can look at the next meeting. Okay. All right, any other comments on that? We're good?
Good.
Okay,
Thank you.
moving on. Reports. Trish, you're up again. An update from the MCAC.
So glad you were here.
Yeah, that worked out nicely. So, anytime you ever need me, just give me a call. Thank you very much for having me here tonight. I apologize, we had to reschedule the last time I was on your agenda. We had some meetings that we needed to get to in Topeka. But today I wanted to give you our first quarter update. It has been a very busy first quarter. It's been one of planning, trying to be more strategic about exactly what MAC is doing. As you know, it's basically myself, and we have an admin assistant that works at MAC. Excuse me, allergies. So we do a lot for this county, and we cover a lot of services in this county. And so we're trying to be more strategic about exactly how we utilize our time and programs that we have around the county to improve our outcomes in economic development across the county. So the first thing that we did last year to get this planning process going was apply for funding with USDA for a rural development grant. Their opportunity grant covers regional strategic planning programs. And so we applied and were awarded a grant to cover that process. And we selected 80 Advantage to do that for us. They are nationally known they do site selection as well. And they also do economic development plans for groups like us. They are used by Kansas Department of Commerce, Kansas Department of Oklahoma, or Oklahoma's Department of Commerce, their equivalent. GRDA, which services the electrical network that Coffeyville is on, as well as several other large partners across the Midwest. And so we thought they'd be a really good fit, as they know the Midwest. They're from Wisconsin, and they also are part of the National Economic Development Professionals Training Program. Her presentation on exactly how this is done. So we wanted to use the best possible person, and we had grant funding to do that. So we went through a process in January where they came to town and met with people, individuals, they met with businesses, they had tabling events for public, and we tried to get a good idea in a very concise and pretty rapid manner of exactly what the feelings were of what's currently going on, and the feelings of how our communities all work together, how our entities and our organizations work together. And then they really did a very deep dive into data analysis, MC data, which is data that they get from both the federal and state levels, Department of Labor, and drills down exactly what the skill set is of our existing workforce within a 50-mile radius, those that commute in, and the existing workforce at our employers here. So we know exactly who we should be recruiting, where are there gaps in our services for our existing businesses that we could recruit in that would support our existing businesses, that meet the needs of our citizens that live in this 50-mile area, for jobs that they could fill if they're currently unemployed or underemployed in our county. So who should we be recruiting? And they identified several businesses in the first phase of the strategic plan, and they're going to come again here in April 23rd, I believe is when they're here. And so this first study showed us that, one, agribusiness is definitely the direction that we should be headed. Crop production, animal production, pet food production. We have the natural resources and the human resources necessary for those businesses. And they go into more detail on that, but I'm trying to give you a quick overview of what they've come up with. But they broke these down into 6-digit NAICS codes, which means a very specific type of pet food manufacturing, very specific types of crop productions that we should be looking at, value-added production for those crops, things like that. Then in heavy and light industrial manufacturing, I'm just going to go over a few of those, but power pump and motor manufacturing. So that was one of the areas that we have some of that in this region, but I think they said that we should really delve into that because we have a really strong workforce for that industry. Pipe and pipe fittings, construction, farm, equipment manufacturing, which obviously we have John Deere just down the road from here, and obviously aircraft parts and manufacturing for aircraft was immediately pulled up to the top of our targeted priorities of who we should be going after. And then one thing they saw was a gap in our services here that I think Max is probably going to hit first, is freight and warehousing transportation services. So we have the empty Amazon building, and we have some freight companies in the region, but with our amazing transportation system we do have here in Montgomery County as a crossroads of multiple transportation systems, this would be a good opportunity to have some sort of freight transport company based in Montgomery County that could utilize a transload, with the great partnerships we have with Watco, with the Port of Catoosa. Cherryville has an excellent hub system already established. So we have a great system here in Montgomery County, and we should be utilizing that better with the freight systems recruitment. And then, of course, professional, scientific, and technical services. With our 2 community colleges, and especially with the services that we're seeing developing out at ICC, I think there's some great opportunities for us to really get into some of the computer programming, business development, and some more specialized services, which ideally fits some of our existing facilities. We have in Independence, the ARCO building. That might be a great opportunity for us to recruit something in for ARCO. So that was nice to see some of that alignment come out of this initial draft, and we're pretty excited about that data. There's obviously the ones on here of the 6-digit NAICS codes that I knew that that's who we should be going after. But the freight transportation piece, we'd never really looked at in depth. Pipe and pipe fittings, we have some of those production companies here that do PVC pipe, with Star Pipe products opening in South Coffeyville. So there's some of that here, but we can expand upon that, it seems like. The second large initiative that we took on this year, and sometimes I bite off more than I can chew, but we really want to delve into workforce development. That is the number one issue that every single one of our businesses have told us in every one of our interviews we've done, whether that's a large industry or a mom and pop company looking for workers. So we're doing a program we call the Talent Turnaround Program. It's a 3-part program. One is recruit, and we're working with our community colleges here in Montgomery County, as well as some other entities to try to create a system where we can recruit people to move to our area that ideally what they're doing in Wichita Tech in Wichita, they're paying for the certification training program. So their tuition, their fees, their housing, their food, their cost of living, transportation. They're guaranteed a job interview at the end of this. And as long as they stay, they guarantee that they'll stay for at least, I think they said 3 years in Wichita. So far, that's worked amazingly well in Wichita. They have 100% placement, and they haven't lost a single person yet. So we would like to see that happen here. We've been working with Wichita Tech and their president. She's a little busy right now because she's in Washington, D.C. on the president's higher education council. But we're working to try to see if we can get that going here in Montgomery County, and I think we're starting to see some progress on that initiative. The second one is retain. We need to retain our youth, and that should be a no-brainer. We want to retain our youth that are being educated in our excellent schools that we have, from kindergarten all the way through our junior colleges. So how do we retain those youth? And one of the ways that we thought that might help with that is to create partnerships, mentorships, relationships with our businesses and our students in our school districts from an early age, so that when a student goes and they are amazing at chemistry, physics, they go off to KU and get their chemical engineering degree, they know that they can come back and work for our amazing entities here in Montgomery County, and that's not something that they question when they get to their junior, senior year at KU. They know they can come back home and get a 6-figure salary right in their hometown. So that needs to be part of our conversation. And one of the things that we're definitely doing, we've got on the books now, is we are doing, we're participating in the National Manufacturing Day. CCC has graciously offered Nellis Hall, which is one of our larger gymnasiums here in Montgomery County, and we're working with area manufacturers to actually put on displays so all of our youth can go through and learn what exactly our manufacturers do and to trigger those conversations. We've also met with all the area superintendents to see if they can utilize their students in internships with these businesses. Can we improve the career pathways and really get into mentorships with people in the profession that they're looking to maybe get into, and really solidify some of that. So that program is starting to really get a nice footing that we've been working on the past 4 months or so. So the last piece, actually, we were excited to announce at our board meeting last week, Kansas Works is picking up and running with it. We had pitched this concept back in the fall, which is retrain. And our idea was that we would have a job coach that would rotate amongst employers in Montgomery County, and they would work with those employees on the job that might be having difficulties. That in the manufacturing world, it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out. You show up too late to work, you get a strike. Your car breaks down and you don't make it in one day, you call in an hour late, that's strike number 2. And the third strike, you might be out. So we want to work with these job coaches and work with those employees that maybe have a strike or two to figure out alternate ways that they can problem solve. How do they find alternate transportation, find childcare issues, match them up with those resources, which we have plentiful resources in Montgomery County. But a lot of the times, these citizens who are perpetually in the system and struggling to keep these jobs might not be aware of those resources. And so that job coach would do that. So Kansas Works has unveiled this program. They announced it last week at our board meeting. And we're excited to hear that they're going to be doing that as a pilot right now. And we're hoping that expands. But they're going to be matching with certain employers around here in Montgomery County to get that underway. So we're excited. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. If someone else will take it and we just get the conversation going, that's what we were here to do. So we're excited about that opportunity. I'm excited about what could happen with our workforce here in Montgomery County. Some of the other things we're doing, We're going after USDA funding again. We've had phenomenal work done in entrepreneurship and small business development in the last couple of years. We really like to say that MAC is a one-stop shop for small business entrepreneurship and startups. We have a booklet, which I have here if anyone would like a copy of it, that covers every single alternative financing program that's available to any business in Montgomery County or in the region, really, that someone could utilize to cover that gap that frequently businesses have. So you can pitch your business idea to a bank, but they say you need 20% down. Startups typically don't have 20% down cash laying around, and that's what these funds would cover. But some of these funds could cover a full project cost if it was very small. We've seen the barbershop out on East Main was fully financed through MAC's USDA RDA loan program. So there's programs like that we have that we can finance some of these small businesses and get them going. So we've had such phenomenal turnout for those that I've actually used up almost all of my funds, and we've had these funds since 1998. We have a 0 default rate. We haven't had a single loan go in default that we've had since 1998. And they're fully revolved a few times over now. We've loaned them out. They've returned their funds. We've loaned them out again. And at this point, I have so many outstanding loans right now that we're down to about $25,000, which will do one more loan. That's all I've got left. So we need additional funds if we're going to continue this growth pattern we're seeing. And I have 5 loans currently in the queue that we've been talking with, trying to get financing set up for. So we've applied for $100,000 from USDA for their revolving loan program that would fund these loans. $10,000 of that $100,000 we're actually going to set aside for rapid loans, and that's something we're seeing happen in the cities, and we want to grasp that. What they're doing is using $1,000 to $3,000 loans, short time periods, 3-year terms, to help with prototyping and some startups, especially for our manufacturers and technology businesses, to get them some of that initial startup capital they need to get that prototype completed, and then they can get their business up and running once they get private investment. So we're seeing that happen across the country. We want to take advantage of that. And then $25,000 of the $100,000 we're taking and using that to do training for our businesses. We hear time and time again that, well, I have this idea, I know I'm a great mechanic, I know I can run my own auto body shop, but I have no Excel skills, or I have no idea of how to use QuickBooks, I have no idea how to market my business on a website. So we're going to host regular meetings, these trainings for these businesses, and we have these resources already. We're not going to reinvent the wheel. Small Business Development Center has great trainings. We have lunch and learns with the chamber, and we'll be partnering with all of them. But the goal is that we can bring in some really qualified speakers that have expertise from around the country to really fine-tune the training that our businesses will receive to give them a leg up over other businesses in the area. So the last thing that you'll see, follow our website. We have our brand new website unveiled last year. It's really amazing. But we're going to be really focusing in on some of the retail and small business resources. A lot of people don't know that MAC has all the market data that a business might need to know about their competition, where people are driving, how far they're driving away to buy a certain good or product. All of that market data is available, and it's a monthly report that comes out every month. It's available on our website. It costs you nothing. So we're trying to get that to where that's easier to find. It's a little challenging to find, and so we're working with our website developer to make that very simple for them to find and build their business plan and all those things that people frequently get caught up on as a roadblock. The last thing I want to talk about is our effort to get a better marketing campaign to market our existing sites. And especially in Independence, we have the West Laurel Industrial Park and we have the Airport Industrial Park that we've been marketing. We have excellent information now with GIS that we're working with the county with and the city. We've done studies in, I think they did it in 1999, 2000, when they did a full site certification process back then. It's been a while. I was in high school last time I think we did that, so it's time to probably re-up that again. And so we're working with KEDA, which is the Kansas Economic Development Alliance. They have a new site certification program that's been approved by Kansas Department of Commerce. We're planning on going through that with both of our industrial parks here in Independence. But while we're getting that going, we need to be marketing those sites. And we are lucky enough to have Westar and Evergy be one of our partners here in Independence. Them, as well as some other partners around the county, are helping us fund a virtual reality virtual tour of these sites. And that would include 3D renderings of what a building would look like on the vacant sites that we have here in Independence, and then a community tour as well that we can use. The Independence Chamber, for example, or tourism could take that piece of the video and use it as a tourism video, virtual reality. It's on my website. I have a link to it on my website if you want to see what it looks like. It's pretty cool. I would suggest going and looking at, I think it's Cheyenne, Wyoming. You can literally feel like you're running with the horses and falling down a whitewater rapids. It gets you very dizzy, but it's amazing. Cool. But I can take these glasses now to the conference that I'm heading to this summer, which is Select USA, which is an international business recruitment conference. And I can take these glasses, and basically a site selector or a business can visit our community virtually, see exactly how the building they want will be laid out, and get a feeling for the community without having to actually travel to Independence and recruit that person from Germany to Independence. It skips a step, and it gets us in front of someone you maybe never would have before with this new technology. So Golden Shovel, which is our website, does this. And right now there's only about 13 communities that they've done this with yet. And so we'll be really on the cutting edge, and that's what we need to do if we're going to get a leg up at these conferences when there's 100,000 participants and 100,000 people out there that are trying to get community development in their town. So we're trying to be more competitive. We're trying to get a leg up in rural America. That's what we have to do. So we just have to try a little harder, work a little harder to get our name out there. So that's what we're trying at MAC right now. So with that, I'll leave it open for questions. I covered a lot of information, I know. So
Any specifics you can share with us on anything here in Independence? I know just one thing that comes to mind is somebody was looking to buy the property next door to Taco Bell.
yes.
Right across the street from Sonic. Is that
I can't
anything
talk
you can
about
say?
that one just
Okay.
yet publicly.
Nothing you can say on that one.
But
Okay.
we do have several retailers that are very actively looking at Independence right now, and we've been working with them to pursue those.
I heard that one, this may be rumor, but I heard that one was specifically wanting to be adjoining to the downtown. They have very
Yes.
specific
They
requirements.
specifically wanted to be on Highway 75, and they wanted to be on that portion of downtown. So we'll see. But and I think that's one thing that we've done very well with the Chamber and Main Street, and they've marketed that downtown. With Sonic relocating, that was a huge red flag for those other retailers similar to Sonic.
Right.
That they see that business relocated to the downtown, that means something.
Yeah.
So,
Good.
yeah, it's nice to see that.
Can you say anything about Tyson?
So yeah, I'll tell you what's going on with Tyson. So right now we're slow. It's very slow right now with Tyson, and that's mostly because they've had an almost entire staff turnaround at the top. Our core team that we've been working with, their engineering director, their Kansas governmental representative, and their poultry person that represents the Midwest, we're still working together, and that hasn't changed at all. But they do have a new governmental relations, international government relations director. They have a new CEO, and they have a new vice president of poultry overall. So we're trying to get everyone reacquainted with our project and move forward. The other thing they've let us know is that Humboldt, Tennessee is about halfway done with its construction, and that was supposed to be Plant B, and they moved to Plant A when everything got shuffled around in 2017. And so once that construction is complete, I think they'll have a much better picture of exactly what their supply chain and the demand for poultry is. I will say, eat more chicken, because they told us that if they see the demand for poultry going up, and it usually does in the summer, I think they'll have a pretty good idea come August what the demand for poultry looks like. We might move forward a little faster, but I don't anticipate an announcement this year at this point, just because of that turnover, because of what's happening with Humboldt, Tennessee. I'm anticipating if we're going to get an announcement, it probably won't be till 2020 at this point. Now, to alleviate any fears for that, though, it's going to take us 6 months at a minimum to do some of this site certification. We're doing the same thing we're doing here in Independence and Coffeyville on that site for Tyson. And we're gonna have to do that no matter what. So if you followed Humboldt, Tennessee's project on Twitter, they were very transparent about that project. They announced that project in November. They didn't do a formal groundbreaking until May, and they didn't do a real groundbreaking until late that summer. So they took 7-8 months to basically a site certification process to make sure that site was in fact workable for them. So we're going to do that now, so we're not wasting any time. So that's what we're doing right now. And that's kind of triggered this need to get this site certification thing going too, is we need to be ready in case this happens. I just got another RFP as I was sitting in the audience actually for a company that I think could be a good fit in Montgomery County, and they would need to have a similar thing done for them. So we're just trying to be more prepared, and the time frame I think is still good. They like I said before, it's not if but when at this point. But we don't know if that's now, 5 years from now, 7 years from now. I don't know, and I wish I did.
That to me looks like it could be such a game changer.
Yeah.
You know, with a couple thousand jobs basically in a state-of-the-art plant, and I feel incredibly blessed to have gone down there and visited with them, and I would love it if my fellow commissioners had that opportunity if it comes along. The place is just so amazing.
Yeah, it
So
really is.
if there's any way to arrange another tour for these gentlemen, because people still come to me and say, well, it smells bad and there's all that runoff, and there's just not. There's no odor and there's no runoff, and I think the more people we can educate to that, then the better when the opportunity does come, and I think it's coming, like you said, down the road.
Yeah, and I think that will be an opportunity. We will be able to get those tours done. I guarantee that all of our city commissioners here will go to tour a plant before anything moves forward. I think the next person who's going to get to do a tour is going to be Governor Kelly. I imagine that's going to be a very exclusive group, and we're working on that right now. So
imagine that.
But hopefully we'll get to fly on her jet, right, and talk to her there and back to tell her why this needs to move forward with the Kansas Department of Commerce.
Sweet.
But the other part of that is amazing is most people aren't aware, but David Tolan, before he was our current Secretary of Commerce, was my peer at Allen County. And frequently on large projects like the Tyson project, David and I would talk and brainstorm when we wanted to be, how do we be more transparent and be better informed for our citizens. And he's very well versed in the Tyson project, because I needed to bounce ideas off of my peer to figure out how we move this forward. And they've done a very good job of that at Thrive Allen County. So having him as our Secretary of Commerce, we have about the best person possible to help us move this project forward. And I can say that he is being very aggressive in helping us get that going.
That's great.
So,
I had not heard that.
yeah.
I would like to say that you scheduled your last meeting the same night as our city commission meeting.
I know. I don't know how that happened. I'm sorry.
It's not
I
acceptable.
told Paula to double check the rest of the meetings. So our next annual meeting is June, I'm going to get this wrong, June 7th. And it's going to be at the Coffeyville Country Club, and we are going to have a very special guest for that. So I would strongly suggest people attend. And we're going to do a twofer this time. We're going to do, because we get all these legislators down here for our golf tournament, we wanted them to actually attend the night before to network with our businesses a little longer. So we're doing our annual meeting on Thursday night, and the next morning we're having our golf tournament. So we really amplify that effect that our businesses and our area leaders get with our elected officials, and hopefully some very key elected officials.
That's what night?
It'll be Thursday, June 7th, and Friday, June 8th.
Just making sure we don't have a meeting then.
Okay, make sure.
Okay, we're good.
What is the status of the ARCO building? Was it still in ownership of the?
It is.
Okay.
Unless it's changed in the last week, it's still within ownership of them.
Okay.
We have it on our website, and it will be part of the virtual reality tour as well. Okay. Although I don't think we'll go into it because it doesn't work quite as well. But we have a local business that I'm talking to that also can do some virtual reality, and so we're looking at maybe seeing if we can get a small version of the virtual reality just for the ARCO building to get it on our website as well. So.
Okay. I think that was on the market for $350,000.
Yeah, and it's extremely negotiable.
Okay.
Extremely big.
It's extremely big. And we had a prospect that was looking at that site, and I say site because they weren't really interested in the building, but the cost to demolish that building was far exceeded the cost that they would consider. So this is a building that we are going to need to figure out how to use. It is a strong building built with red iron. The good news is in that study we found out that a majority of the building has already been The asbestos that we thought was probably throughout has been abated for the most part. I imagine the insulation on that red iron structure itself probably hasn't been, but internally it has been remodeled to the point where that asbestos has been removed. So that's good news. That was one of our fears, that it'd be $1 million just for asbestos removal for such a large building, but that appears to not be the case. So, but I can get into more detail with that later.
Okay,
I'm good.
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 All
No
right.
questions.
Thank you very much.
Trish, thank you
Appreciate
very
it.
much for your time.
All right.
Thank you, Tricia.
All right. Sean, you're up. Whiskey Creek Hydrology Study Update.
Here to give a progress update on the Whiskey Creek study.
Okay.
We've completed the preliminary hydraulic analysis, and we're fine-tuning some certain elements of that. That analysis included the flood insurance study data, which that's the original study that FEMA did. So it incorporated that data, and it's taken a little bit of time to get that data from FEMA, but that's all been done. So one of the first things that we did analyze was that critical area between Sycamore and 20th, and that is certainly a bottleneck, and there will be significant improvements to the upstream water surface elevation with improving that stretch. To date, we've looked at putting in culverts on Sycamore and 20th. It'll take double box culverts at 12 by 6, and then a 15-foot wide open channel where the pipe is now. So we're assigning some costs to that. And similarly, we are finalizing the cost for some different alternates on detention up on the north end of the creek. We've also examined other potential improvements, and we plan at the second meeting in May for our hydrologist to come down and look at that in detail, to discuss that with the commission. But I'd be glad to answer any questions at this point.
That'd be great.
And I haven't looked at this, I'm sure you have, prior to this, when Jefferson School
Mhm.
and that area was developed,
Mhm.
is there not a retention pond of some sorts?
There is,
That's
and I've
located on
heard
that
comments
property?
that maybe all the stormwater isn't going through that, and I've asked our hydrologist to look at that. It could be a case that all the stormwater doesn't necessarily have to go through that. It's a matter of limiting the discharge from the site to be equal to the undeveloped conditions. So it may be operating just as it was intended, but we are looking at that. I've heard a couple of citizens say the same thing. So.
Okay. The remark I heard was that it is a retention pond, but it's basically just allowing for pretty rapid flow of water through it. And like I said, I've not had a chance to take a look at it. So.
Yeah, and it is. The pipes are large on that, but they're also large at the high school detention area, and it's because they're geared more towards the bigger events than the smaller events.
Okay.
Like the 100-year flood type events is where you really get the benefit, and yeah, a 10-year it may not have any benefit. But you get all that benefit on the 100-year. And there may be ways to modify that, and I'll ask our hydrologist to look at that. Maybe ways to modify that where we're getting more benefit on the lower end. We can take a look at that.
Okay.
Yeah, 'cause basing it on a 100-year flood, that wouldn't be very effective. 10 years seems to be the more the cycle for a retention pond, and
Well,
just
especially with our issue and the problem subdivision, it may be better to spend the dollars for those lower events or more common events than all on the 100 years.
yeah, because some of the areas were built without retention being required, but the newer structures with the addition to the high school, that should have probably had some considered there, but I'm not for sure if there was or not.
I think on the most recent edition there was, but you know, the initial construction there
Right.
was not. So
So your hydraulic study, where does it start? At the north end of the tributary area, or
yes,
So you're coming all the way through.
all the way to Cherry Street. Yes.
Then, are you looking at the retention areas individually at the major facilities of schools?
Yes. Yes.
So you'll, with your calcs, you'll know by the size of the pipe, and are you doing topos to know the depth of the retention also?
We did some limited survey, and I will have to ask if that included an examination of the retention areas. We do have some topographic data on the retention areas. And I'm going to double check that we're looking at that discharge structure, and we'll be able to tell you what it is now, where it provides benefit, and how modifications could be made to provide benefit during the other events. Because usually those are geared towards one end or the other.
Yeah. Because the depth and the diameter of the discharge coincide with the intensity of the flood, a 10-year flood or a 100-year flood.
Yeah, and you know, it's you know, the city's regulations on detention aren't that rigid, so
Okay.
it's basically what we see the most benefit for, because it says undeveloped condition. Are you meaning the undeveloped condition for the 10-year event, or are you meaning the undeveloped condition for the 100-year event? And I don't believe the city's current regulations spell that out. But for us doing this study, we'll be able to see which has the most benefit, and maybe size a structure somewhere in between that, or a discharge structure somewhere in between that provides the most benefits.
So then at the end of the report, will there be enough information that we can come back, or are you going to give recommendations like to reevaluate our requirements, to redefine the requirements for on-site retention and things like that? Or
Yeah, we are. I wouldn't say it's a detailed examination, but yeah, we have looked at that, and we can make some recommendations on a more common municipal code for future development.
Just when we get to the end, we should have some specific recommendations of to kind of avert the problem.
Right,
in the
that
future.
makes sense. What we certainly will have are potential projects, cost estimates, and we can certainly make those recommendations on improving the code. That's not a huge deal. We have a number of examples of other municipal codes that I would say are much more better suited to averting these type of problems. So.
Now, there's a large parcel that could be residential eventually developed there for restricting runoff from it or slowing it down. How would that be handled? Or is that something, again, are you looking at that track to project the problem with it developed?
And there are a lot of the more modern municipal codes, they will require detention, and they also may allow for money that could have been used for detention to be basically given to the city for other types of projects downstream that may have more benefit than that on-site detention. So we are looking at that, and we're looking at both of those. Is because sometimes you get in, definitely on the smaller end of things, a small development, that detention becomes basically a nuisance after a while and not maintained, and then it doesn't operate well. So in a very small development, it's moving towards, they pay an allotment instead of building those smaller development. So we're looking at both ends of that on that potential development.
Yeah,
Like,
that's-
if detention is the best solution, or could that money that would be used for detention be better off in one of the other projects downstream, or contributing to one of the other projects downstream?
Yeah, that's something, as that property becomes developed, then we need to have a plan in place to assure the residents that are experiencing problems now that we're allowing that to flow through and not continue to back up. But we've increased the discharge downstream, that it's not going to back up worse than it did before, or at least be alleviated.
Right, right. And this study will be able to do that, and will hopefully give the residents some confidence that we have examined the situation and have improved it with the potential projects.
Okay.
Okay. Great. I have a request to address the City Commission. Anita Howe, would you please come forward? Hi, how are you, Anita? Good to see you.
Again, my concern is Whiskey Creek and the flooding, and I just came to listen to see what was said. The area that's shown there is south of where I live, so my concern still is north of that area, and I understand from Sean that you got to clean it out from the south and work your way up north. I was just wondering, is the city going through Whiskey Creek continually and cleaning out the area? I know after the original meetings, there was some clean out from south of 10th Street, a couple blocks that I know of, which was between 10th Street and Beach, and then Beach and Circle Drive, that area. That area was cleaned out, and the railroad track area was cleaned out. But are they going down farther? Is the city going down farther and cleaning out the area?
Yes, Sean?
Add some to that.
Sure.
Our hydrologist, Aaron Moore, did walk the creek with Mike, and he identified some areas for improvement that's going to be part of our report.
Okay.
So in addition to what the city has done to date, there is some additional, I don't know if I'd call it cleaning or just modifications that we plan on doing the whole route of the creeks, or recommending for the whole route of the creek.
And then the storm drains, what about that? Because like I said, there's only one storm drain on my street, and then the one over on 19th, and it's narrow, and where the street has been repaved, it's kind of cutting off where the water can go through. I mean, you might have had originally 6 inches, and now you're down to maybe 3. And so it's putting a crimp on the water going through too, because it was said that there wasn't any dilapidation or, damage to the actual storm drain. But again, it's getting cut off somewhere, and I didn't know if something could be done with that too.
We had looked at the storm drain on Circle Drive, just off from your property.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And they sent a camera through that, and that was open.
Right.
I know the last time I looked at the drainage as it crosses Sycamore Street on the north side of that Sycamore, there's a couple of pretty good sized drains. I looked at those here the other day, and those are still open. There's some sediment that has started to fill in on both sides of that, but that's still open. And I looked at the railroad track, both sides of that, before it gets to Sycamore, and for the most part, that debris it was removed and cleaned up, and that is still open. So I've looked at some spots to make sure that they are open. Matter of fact, I went down to Cedar and South Penn, and I looked at Rock Creek. Now that part of the area is in the county, but there was enough debris on the east side of that Penn, where that road crosses that little bridge. On the east side of that, there was a pretty good sizable dam there that was creating a backup of water flow continuing past that point. And I think I turned that into the county, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Anyway, that's
you
been,
will.
that's been, no, that's already been cleaned. I've looked
Oh.
back at it, and they've removed that dam and cleaned that out. So there is flow from that point on. The only drain that I saw that was still needed some attention was the one at the end of South Penn prior to the railroad tracks, and that's been turned into the city, and that particular drain needs to be cleaned out. It's plugged up, and there's not going to be any water flow from that point into Rock Creek as it stands now. But what I've looked at so far, it appears to be open. But I've not looked at everything. I
understand.
I've just looked at places as I've driven by, and some improvements have been made. City's made improvements on some of these culverts and some of these drains and made sure they are cleaned, and so.
Is it normal for a storm drain to be, how many storm drains should you have? I mean,
Well,
in a block area or a range or area?
Sean,
Yeah, that's part of the issue that Commissioner Fish was talking about was when the subdivision went in, there weren't detailed development requirements, and today a city would typically require that storm sewer handle a 10-year event, and we know we're not anywhere near that on Whiskey Creek. It's probably be lucky to be a 2-year event.
Yeah.
So that's part of, I think, what the city wants to work towards is modernizing some of those requirements so that it doesn't happen again, and then of course see what can be done to help improve the.
your report, you'll look at the inlets and say from your survey and your study if they're large enough or too small.
Yeah,
I
I know they're too small now for, again, it depends what event we want to tie to it, but typically it's a 10-year event, and the creek can't handle the 10-year event. But we will list what capacity they are and see if there's any, I guess, low-hanging fruit that could be done to improve those, the immediate collection systems.
The data you're gathering is really going to give us the information to make those decisions. So
Correct.
Once all that's gathered, then determining the extent of the flood, 10, 15, 20, whatever it is, then those numbers translate into the size of the opening and the pipes and the widths of the trenches. So
Correct. If the creek can only handle a 2-year event, then we really can't, it wouldn't be wise to invest in a 10-year collection system because the capacity's just not there. But there's still other ways that it can be improved. But yeah.
Okay. All right, Sean.
Well, thank you. I just didn't want it being put on the back burner like it was years ago, so.
Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you
All
very
right,
much.
Anita.
thank
All
you.
right. Thank you very much. Sean, thank you. Okay. We've all had a chance to look at the city board minutes. Moving along, city manager's comments. Okay. Commissioner's comments.
I'd like to mention one thing. I can't remember if I mentioned this before. This is a personal matter. You may have heard rumors that we're getting a new barbecue restaurant in the city. And the owner has required to go for a month of training in Dallas. Yeah, I know. It's like 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. So for the meetings in May, I will try to join you gentlemen by phone, but I won't be here. But they did say they'd give me time off to get on the call.
We could Skype too.
Yeah, I'll be covered in barbecue sauce.
So
Anyway, that's all I have.
You're going to bring back some ribs for us to try?
Yes, that's right. Just for the commissioners.
Yeah, yeah.
Dipping sauce and, yeah, whatever else you got. Some good slaw.
I don't know if it's good or not, actually, but let's hope so.
Okay.
I don't have any.
Okay, I don't have anything either. And we've already addressed, that was the only public concern that we had. We've covered that. So we're at the point to where we're ready to adjourn. I make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you for being in attendance.